Welcome back to part 3 of my Metabolism Matters workshop, seminar, and now webinar. Thanks for staying with me. If you've sat through sections 1 and 2, and you'll see when we start part 3, we're going to be talking about getting everything in balance, the truth about exercise, supplements, rest, and recovery. So since you may have been sitting for a while, the first thing we're going to do is take a little exercise break in terms of looking at all the elements that we've been discussing in the first two parts, the elements of balance. We talked mostly in sections 1 and 2 about nutrition. We're going to discuss exercise, rest, and recovery, and how many people use supplements or go for sort of a short fix to try to cover the fact that they aren't properly resting and recovering, or to try to patch holes in their diet. But since you've been sitting for a while and we are talking balance, I use this next slide very effectively in my live seminars, but I'm going to walk you through this because I'm always amazed at how poor people's balance really is, and even younger folks in the crowd. It's not just usually the older individuals that have problems with this, but it relates to the next area when I talk about how people design their fitness and exercise programs to get in balance, or out of balance, I should say. But generally, as we age, our balance usually gets worse. Just like RMR declines, remember we talked about that 2 to 3% decline every decade after age about 40. Well, because we are generally sedentary, we are not training some of the most vital components to our balance. And again, as we get older, these things only get worse. And usually it's due to weakness, stiffness, and also a decline in vision. I do this test in a live audience, and I'm going to have you actually do this at home and try it, and the way you will give me feedback is by at the end of this seminar you can actually evaluate yourself as well as evaluate the seminar, and you might even win a few prizes, as you'll find out. But in the live seminar, I start by just having individuals stand for 60 seconds on what they would be considered their dominant leg, and that's usually the leg you would kick a soccer ball or a ball with. For many people, that's their right leg. They tend to be right leg dominant. If you are, for the first 60 seconds, you just to slowly bend your left leg and try to keep that leg fully flexed off the floor. If you can grab your left ankle or around the back of your shoe, if you have a loop during the test, that's great. But ultimately, I'm only requiring that you clear your left leg, or the leg that's not working, off the floor. And if anyone who's watching this replay remembers from the live session that we did at Shape Up, there was I had a near miss with someone that actually cramped up, and I ended up catching them. So do not, if you're tight, if you have problems with your vision, known problems with your vestibular or your balance system, you might not want to try this. But for the general population, try that on your dominant leg. Great. If you're able to stand for the full amount of time, quickly shift to your left leg, what you should immediately, or your non-dominant leg, I should say, you shouldn't assume. What you might immediately feel is that there's a little bit more shaking, a little bit more twitching or unsteadiness in that non-dominant ankle. If you could balance on both sides, I usually look around the room and more than half the group in the live seminar is already seated. But if you can balance on both sides, you should be able to, by the way, but many people can't. Then progress to the second part, which is take your vision out. And if you go back to your dominant, I say go back to your best side, but if you, I usually don't get to the last part because mostly usually there's only 1 or 2 people that can stand with their eyes closed. But if you take the vision out by closing your eyes, you should feel automatically that your ankle starts to work overtime. And if you want to know more specifically about why that happens, go to myphysicaltherapycoach.com or join my Healthy News newsletter. I'm always talking about timely subjects such as that, balance training. But I still would encourage you to take this test. Obviously, can't do it over the web to see who's cheating and who's not, but give me some feedback on the evaluation form for this webinar. Okay, so that leads us into formal exercise. And sometimes one of the main reasons why people have poor balance is even if they are exercising, they may not be weak, but they may be actually developing more imbalances by not addressing the appropriate muscles. I often shake my head whenever I go into a health club and see the same people doing the same exercise the same time of day and expecting different results. There's a big, shift in the terms being used now. Most people understand that you should probably be doing some type of resistance training to boost their RMR. And there can be a crossover between aerobic and anaerobic if you're doing an interval circuit, and it's beyond the scope of this course to get into those details. But again, go to my physical therapy coach if you want more training information, tip sheets, etc. But I wanted to point out an example that I mentioned the term EPOC way at the beginning of webinar 1 in the introduction. And that term, I'm finally revealing, refers to excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC. Powerful too, and I illustrate my own example just to show you the power of what EPOC is and how it can relate, and the whole idea of muscle building and strength training and how it can actually raise your RMR. Now, this is using an example of when I was way back as a dietitian working at the hospital. And if the main thing here is if you look at the date, if you're in New England and around the April 15th, there's actually a holiday that called Patriots Day in Massachusetts. There's an important timing of that event. At the time I was a dietetic intern, had the opportunity to actually have my metabolic rate measured. You can see where that was here. If you had used those old prediction formulas, I should have, based on my current age, height, weight, should have been around 1,800, almost 1,900 calories resting. 2 days after the Boston Marathon, the big thing here is that I was actually measured on the 17th. And I relate that to EPOC because I actually ran the marathon that year, had my measurement taken. The physician that was conducting the test thought that the machine wasn't calibrated correctly because my number was so high. But when I told him or asked him if I had run a marathon, would it have an effect, he said absolutely. You could see how high my number was adjusted over baseline, or my actual read. Now I point that out because one of the things that happens with muscle conditioning, in the case, this is an extreme case, most people aren't going to exercise for 4 hours, but many of the same things that happen physiologically to muscle, in the case of a marathon, you're actually breaking down and repairing tissue, which is what directly relates to the need for more energy to repair. That happens with strength training and appropriately designed interval circuits. Again, if you want more information, go to myphysicaltherapycoach.com. I have a lot of smart moves circuits in there that are designed around addressing balance, making the most use of your time, but also building lean muscle. Okay, so I used my own example there, but I want to actually give you more points on how to achieve your goals when it comes to exercise. In general, I find individuals have the most success when they commit to a group, a coach, such as myself online or another health professional. I walk gently around the term personal trainer because you can sometimes do more harm than good. There is no regulation in that industry. So one of the things I do is if you're going to work with someone, work with a health professional, usually work with a degreed professional that has a background in exercise, physical therapy, athletic training, etc. They can help you and really understand how to design a program based upon you and do a complete evaluation or assessment prior to designing a program. You want to try to shoot for 5 days a week or more of some type of exercise. Get your body in a consistent mode of actually burning calories. If you say you're going to do 6 to 7 and you do 5, great. Give yourself a day off to rest and recover, but most days of the week you need to be moving. You need to chart your progress, know your numbers, and write them down. And If you've been with me for 1 and 2, you know the importance now of measuring your RMR, or know how to work the energy balance equation. And finally, I think it's important to actually create a Power Vision video or movie outlining your health goals. This is kind of a newer technique or terms used, but there's a lot of ways now that you can create a blog or create your own family or office challenge. Record it, and so that you are accountable not only to yourself, but if you're in a group, to others. And there's a lot of power behind that, and I'm going to be going more over that in my Healthy News newsletter, as I mentioned in the last issue. But finally, we're getting into supplementation, and I'm not going to give this the adequate time that it deserves, but I wanted to talk about how this relates to most people's misunderstanding about supplementation. And there's this myth out there that modern technology depletes foods through, and usually the excuses that are given are either high cooking temperatures, pesticides, shipping delays, and genetic alterations. There's a lot more, but in general, what's real about that? Usually those people that are trying to do that and pitch you, there's a hidden motive in that they're trying to sell you something. If your foods are properly selected, you can get adequate nutrition. I do, after working with an individual, and I understand that there's a deficiency they're not meeting through food, may make suggestions for a supplement. But in general, you need to see how your diet shapes up before you start blindly adding products. So what makes supplements any better? The reality is, perhaps they are not. And on the next slide, you're going to see the 25 million reasons why they may not be better. The truth is, and despite what marketers will tell you and supplement advertising will show, you simply cannot buy a pill solution to your sluggish metabolism. As you see at the bottom, I say big but there, that the truth is the e-pill does work. And if you've known me through this session, when I talk about E, I'm referring to exercise. As you can see, when I mentioned $25 million suit, I'm discussing the fact that, the FTC came down on a lot of these companies recently, and I have to be careful what I said, but I'm only reporting the facts that many of these companies were actually sued for misleading and false claims. And the one that I kind of am the most shocked at here is this is a Bayer company. And here's just an example. They take, if you see in the corner, this EGCG, a compound often in green tea, somehow related, and in my book I talk more about it, related to having some thermogenic effect or metabolism boosting effect. They take a little bit of science and then, without any restriction, talk about how their multi now is weight smart. Misleading, absolutely, but only one case in an enormous amount of products that come out daily when they're unregulated. And here's the reason. Back in 1997, there was something that was passed called the Dietary Health and Education Act. And that essentially made the consumer, what I say, buyer beware. Because at that point, and to this day, most people don't understand that there is not a government or other outlying agency that is responsible for routinely testing multis or other dietary supplements for their content or quality. That act kind of put the onus on the manufacturer to back up their claims. So the manufacturer does not have to test their products. Some do independently. But here's where the logic about relying on nutrition or whole foods and having poor nutrient value because of shipping and processing kind of doesn't hold water in my book, is that most raw ingredients are imported and stored. So think about that. They're coming in many cases from overseas. They're sitting on a shelf before they're put into the actual product. That time they're then heat processed and coated for improved shelf life and not bioavailability. So what I suggest to folks is, you really need to look at an independent agency if you're evaluating a nutrition product. As much as some companies will put up small studies on their site, I refer people to using Consumer Lab, and online that's consumerlab.com. It's an independent agency that tests supplements. It pulls products off the shelf and actually tells you, are the items in there, are they in there in the appropriate amount that they're claimed? Are they effectively utilized? Are there any impurities in them? All important properties you should be looking for if you're actually paying good money for a supplement. So if you're still puzzled, I would suggest going and reading more at Consumer Lab. It's a subscription service. It's well worth the price even if you're just buying one, considering one supplement product at the current price tag that you see on the shelves. But in my book, I go over in detail a lot of the other components of a lot of the supplements I review that make metabolic claims or fat loss claims. I think there's a little bit of I say ephedrine and caffeine. I say in my seminar usually that those products work. They work so well that they'll kill you. So be very careful in high amounts some of these products, especially some of the ephedrine-based products that should have been pulled off the market, but there are derivatives of those that are back out again. So there's good evidence that flaxseed oil, we're talking about omegas here, and again, doesn't have to be from plant sources. There's the, when I say that, I include, that's my best picture of a fish, guppy, I guess, but also green tea extract. We're not going to go into detail here, but I say get the facts. There's good resources out there, but there's a lot of misinformation. So we're wrapping up here with the third part of the webinar series. Obviously, you don't have any ability to send me a live question now, but I would encourage you to give me feedback through Healthy News. That's my newsletter. You can sign up at myphysicaltherapycoach.com. Take the free trial offer at My Nutrition Coach. There's an online demo on the login screen. Whether or not you decide to take the offer or not, I encourage you to see how that interactive nutrition report card works. Again, I have it's free for a limited time, so jump onto the list before it goes into a subscription base. It's called the Nutrition Minute. That's a video e-zine, and of course any of my new books out there I believe will help you get more on track with your nutrition and exercise programming. So again, finally be sure to enter our raffle. Whether you do this after a live event or if you're listening on a video replay online, I do raffle off one free winner each month for your feedback, but you have to give me your feedback here, okay? And submit it to me so I can put you in the drawing each month. And here's some of the things that I often raffle off. So I also want to know what you want covered in future seminars, because I hope to make this regular webinar series available through my websites. So again, if you need more information, you know where to find me. Hopefully by now you know some of the things I offer, and I welcome you to call me with questions or email me through my websites. Contact me there. Thanks again for watching.